Welcome to Lost in Revision. All of our content is public domain, literature, fairy tales, and folklore. All of our music is by Nathan Hubble and is used with his permission. Thanks, and enjoy the show. Hey everybody, welcome to Lost in Revision, brought to you by September 10th, 2025. I'm here as always with two of my favorite humans, Angel and Polly. How are you today, Angel?
Well, we are well into the beginning of the school year, and I am very relieved to say this group of students have been about as delightful as I've had yet. There are still a few, let's call them interesting personalities,
Isn't there always?
But as a whole, they are making it possible for me to actually enjoy teaching again. Whew. Of course, being team lead this year for a new curriculum has its own bundle of extra work and fun. But as soon as I get into the rhythm and get everything kind of down to a routine, this could be a good year.
It's excellent to hear that you're enjoying your students based on what I've been hearing online from other teachers about this new generation.
No, I've heard a lot of teachers are quitting. They're just outright quitting. Career
Right?
teachers. They're just walking.
Yeah, well, last year's group did cause quite a few of my friends to quit teaching. They were
Oh.
they made me have to start dyeing my hair. There was just too much extra white.
I do love that white though. I'm so jealous.
Embrace it. Embrace it. I have three white hairs.
I have a whole head full now. So we were due a good year. Oh, I was just gonna say that one of the things that a lot of teachers are wondering and hoping is this group is kind of indicative of what we're about to get for a while, because we are finally past the age in 6th grade that was impacted by all of the COVID, the online COVID stuff.
You're moving away from the new generation of boomers and into the new generation of Gen Xers.
Yeah, pretty much.
You're in the post-COVID generation.
Yeah.
Right. So, how are you, Polly?
I'm managing. We had a tragedy a couple of weeks ago. My father passed unexpectedly after a very short illness, which ended up being a collection of quite severe but undetected illnesses. So there were several whirlwind trips to Atlanta, followed by the uncertainty of trying to figure out how to get his affairs wrapped up. My mother has been in chemo since May, so us kids were trying to get things taken care of for her as much as we can. Yeah. Luckily, he was not the sort to be unprepared for the unexpected, so not only were all of his affairs neatly ordered, but he even lined up professionals to help with the process. Don't leave your loved ones hanging. You never know when you could go, and there are always things to take care of after you're gone, especially if you have dependents. He was one of the kindest, wisest, most intelligent people I've ever known, and the world is definitely worse off without him in it.
Yeah. I am so sorry for your loss, and working in cemeteries for 20 years. I totally understand needing to have arrangements made.
I was listening to music while I was at work the other day, and Red Sovine's Daddy's Girl came on, so I'm like crying in my hash browns.
Isn't it somebody else's hash browns?
They're all my hash browns.
Extra salt included.
It was.
I mean, you cannot even hear the title of a Red Sovine song without starting to sing. Without starting to sing and cry, both at the same time.
But it had to be Daddy's Girl.
That was just bad timing for you. So, Angel, why don't you tell us a little bit about the history and the culture of this story?
Yeah, let me do that before I start crying.
Right?
Lord, my throat is all blocked right now. So anyway, one of the things that is interesting about this story is it lived for years as one of London's most favorite folk tales before it made into print. The stories tell highly fictionalized versions of the very popular Richard Whittington, who was Lord Mayor of London 3 times in the 1390s and the early 1400s. Many people were most familiar with the children's book version of the story that was written by Marcia Brown. It was a recipient of the Caldecott Honor in 1951 for its illustrations, and that's where I first encountered the story of Dick Whittington. The version that I used for today is from an interesting collection that was published in 1889 The book was called Amusing Prose Chapbooks, Chiefly of the Last Century. And it has several stories that I'm thinking of maybe using for future episodes. Although interestingly enough, when I saw chapbooks at first, I was like, what, poetry? Because I'm so used to chapbooks being what all of my slam poet friends put together to sell when they do features. So I was
Right, that
like,
makes sense.
okay. So the connection from an 1889 book to modern slam poetry kind of caught me off guard.
I was thinking chapbooks, like books for chaps, for the boys, for the guys. I gotta say, I don't think I've actually ever read this story in its entirety until now. I had seen picture book versions, like a picture and a line per page, but I enjoyed the story. It was good. I liked seeing the fully fleshed out version of it.
Yeah.
It was nice to read. It was a good read.
There was a slightly older print version that I almost used. It was by Mary Ellis and was called Dick and His Cat, which of course y'all could have done really fun things with that name. But it was
Not
printed
if we're
in
gonna not have to put our podcast to explicit. We can't.
It was printed in 1871 and is unique in that she wrote the entire story in a language that children could read for themselves. None of the words contain more than 4 letters or has more than 1 syllable.
Huh.
That's
True
hard.
children's literature. I love those books though. And most of the US needs that at this point.
Ugh, seriously.
Get them to read it all.
So, of course, I have to mention that no one can point to anything in the real Dick Whittington's life that has anything to do with a cat.
Poor him.
Yeah. Also, the real Whittington was far from the poor urchin boy that's in the story. He was actually the youngest son of a wealthy Gloucestershire squire. Try to say that 3 times real fast. However, he did make his fortune through shipping and trading, and his historical rise in power actually came from loaning Henry IV a hefty sum.
Huh. That's like giving money to the US government, sort of.
Yeah, at the time, back in the 1300s, I read somewhere that he had loaned Henry over 21,000 pounds.
Holy
That was a
cow.
lot.
That
Like,
was
yeah,
a lot of
if
money
you
back then.
translate that in today's money, that's a lot. We're just gonna stick with a lot because I don't do public math is against my religion.
That's like buying the crown level of
Right?
money right there.
Well, usury was against the law back
I was
then.
gonna say he probably paid off all his sins.
So all he really got in return for all of that money he gave Henry was royal favor, which that's probably
I mean, royal favor's pretty good to have.
that's probably has a lot to do with him becoming mayor of London, though. So
He was a
Probably,
beloved king,
probably.
so
Yeah. So let's move on to the reading of the story and then we can discuss it after.
The History of Dick Whittington and His Cat. In the reign of the famous King Edward III, there was a little boy called Dick Whittington, whose father and mother died when he was very young, so that he remembered nothing at all about them, and was left a dirty little fellow running about a country village. As poor Dick was not old enough to work, he was in a sorry plight. He got but little for his dinner, and sometimes nothing at all for his breakfast, for the people who lived in the village were very poor themselves, and could spare him little more than the parings of potatoes, and now and then a hard crust. For all this, Dick Whittington was a very sharp boy, and was always listening to what everyone was talking about. On Sundays, he never failed to get near the farmers, as they sat talking on the tombstones in the churchyard before the parson was come. And once a week you might be sure to see little Dick leaning against the signpost of the village alehouse, where people stopped to drink as they came from the next market town. And whenever the barber's shop door was open, Dick listened to all the news he told his customers. In this manner, Dick heard of the great city called London, how the people who lived there were all fine gentlemen and ladies, that there were singing and music in it all day long, and that the streets were paved all over with gold. One day a wagoner, with a large wagon and 8 horses, all with bells at their heads, drove through the village while Dick was lounging near his favorite signpost. The thought immediately struck him that it must be going to the fine town of London, and taking courage, he asked the wagoner to let him walk with him by the side of the wagon. The man, hearing from poor Dick that he had no parents, and seeing by his ragged condition that he could not be worse off, told him he might go if he would. So they set off together. Dick got safe to London, and so eager was he to see the fine streets paved all over with gold that he ran as fast as his legs could carry him through several streets, expecting every moment to come to those that were all paved with gold. For Dick had 3 times seen a guinea in his own village, and observed what a great deal of money it brought in change. So he imagined he had only to take up some little bits of the pavement to have as much money as he desired. Poor Dick ran till he was tired, and at last, finding it grow dark, and that whichever way he turned he saw nothing but dirt instead of gold, he sat down in a dark corner and cried himself to sleep. Little Dick remained all night in the streets, and next morning, finding himself very hungry, he got up and walked about, asking those he met to give him only a halfpenny to keep him from starving. But nobody stayed to answer him, and only 2 or 3 gave him anything, so that the poor boy was soon in the most miserable condition. Being almost starved to death, he laid himself down at the door of one Mr. Fitzwarren, a great rich merchant. Here he was soon perceived by the cook-maid, who was an ill-tempered creature, and happened just then to be very busy dressing dinner for her master and mistress. So, seeing poor Dick, she called out, "What business have you there, you lazy rogue? There's nothing else but beggars. If you do not take yourself away, we will see how you will like a sousing of some dishwater I have here that is hot enough to make you caper." Just at this time Mr. Fitzwarren himself came home from the city to dinner, and, seeing a dirty, ragged boy lying at the door, said to him, "Why do you lie there, my lad? You seem old enough to work. I fear you must be somewhat idle." "No, indeed, sir," says Whittington, "that is not true, for I would work with all my heart, but I know nobody, and I believe I'm very sick for want of food." "Poor fellow!" answered Mr. Fitzwarren. Dick now tried to rise, but was obliged to lie down again, being too weak to stand, for he had not eaten anything for 3 days, and was no longer able to run about and beg a halfpenny of people in the streets. So the kind merchant ordered that he should be taken into his house, and have a good dinner immediately, and that he should be kept to do what dirty work he was able for the cook. Little Dick would have lived very happily in this worthy family, had it not been for the crabbed cook, who was finding fault and scolding him from morning till night, and was withal so fond of roasting and basting that, when the spit was out of her hands, she would be at basting poor Dick's head and shoulders with a broom or anything else that happened to fall in her way, till at last her ill usage of him was told to Miss Alice, Mr. Fitzwarren's daughter, who asked the ill-tempered creature if she was not ashamed to use the little friendless boy so cruelly, and added she would certainly be turned away if she did not treat him with more kindness. But though the cook was so ill-tempered, Mr. Fitzwarren's footman was quite the contrary. He had lived in the family many years, and was rather elderly, and had once a little boy of his own, who died when about the age of Whittington, so he could not but feel compassion for the poor boy. As the footman was very fond of reading, he used generally in the evening to entertain his fellow servants, when they had done their work, with some amusing book. The pleasure our little hero took in hearing him made him very much desire to learn to read too. So the next time the good-natured footman gave him a halfpenny, he bought a horn book with it, and with a little of his help, Dick soon learned his letters, and afterwards to read. About this time Miss Alice was going out one morning for a walk, and the footman happening to be out of the way, little Dick, who had received from Mr. Fitzwarren a neat set of clothes to go to church on Sundays, was ordered to put them on and walk behind her. As they walked along, Miss Alice, seeing a poor woman with one child in her arms and another at her back, pulled out her purse and gave her some money. And as she was putting it again in her pocket, she dropped it on the ground and walked on. Luckily, Dick, who was behind, saw what she had done, picked it up immediately, and presented it to her. Besides the ill humor of the cook, which now, however, was somewhat mended, Whittington had another hardship to get over. This was that his bed, which was a flock, was placed in a garret, where there were so many holes in the floor and walls that he never went to bed without being awakened in his sleep by great numbers of rats and mice, which generally ran over his face and made such a noise that he sometimes thought the walls were tumbling down about him. One day a gentleman who paid a visit to Mr. Fitzwarren happened to have dirtied his shoes, and begged that they might be cleaned. Dick took great pains to make them shine, and the gentleman gave him a penny. This he resolved to lay out in buying a cat, if possible, and the next day, seeing a little girl with a cat under her arm, he went up to her and asked if she would let him have it for a penny, to which the girl replied that she would with all her heart, for her mother had more cats than she could maintain, adding that the one she had was an excellent mouser. This cat Whittington hid in the garret, always taking care to carry her a part of his dinner, and in a short time he had no further disturbance from the rats and mice, but slept as sound as a top. Soon after this, the merchant, who had a ship ready to sail, richly laden, and thinking it but just that all his servants should have some chance for good luck as well as himself, called them into the parlor, and asked them what commodity they chose to send. All mentioned something they were willing to venture, but poor Whittington, who, having no money nor goods, could send nothing at all, for which reason he did not come in with the rest. But Miss Alice, guessing what was the matter, ordered him to be called, and offered to lay down some money for him from her own purse. But this, the merchant observed, would not do, for it must be something of his own. Upon this, poor Dick said he had nothing but a cat, which he bought for a penny that was given him. "Fetch thy cat, boy," says Mr. Fitzwarren, "and let her go." Whittington brought poor puss, and delivered her to the captain, with tears in his eyes, for he said he should now again be kept awake all night by the rats and mice. All the company laughed at the oddity of Whittington's adventure, and Miss Alice, who felt the greatest pity for the poor boy, gave him some halfpence to buy another cat. This, and several other marks of kindness shown him by Miss Alice, made the ill-tempered cook so jealous of the favors the poor boy received that she began to use him more cruelly than ever, and constantly made game of him for sending his cat to sea, asking him if he thought it would sell for as much money as would buy a halter. At last the unhappy little fellow, being unable to bear this treatment any longer, determined to run away from his place. He accordingly packed up the few things that belonged to him, and set out very early in the morning on All Hallow Day, which is the 1st of November. He travelled as far as Holloway, and there sat down on a stone, which to this day is called Whittington Stone, and began to consider what course he should take. While he was thus thinking what he could do, bow bells, of which there were then only 6, began to ring, and it seemed to him that their sounds addressed him in this manner: "Turn again, Whittington, Lord Mayor of London." "Lord Mayor of London," says he to himself. "Why, to be sure, I would bear anything to be Lord Mayor of London and ride in a fine coach. Well, I will go back and think nothing of all the cuffing and scolding of old Cicely if I am at last to be Lord Mayor of London." So back went Dick, and got into the house and set about his business before Cicely had come down the stairs. The ship with the cat on board was long beaten about at sea, and was at last driven by contrary winds on a part of the coast of Barbary, inhabited by Moors that were unknown to the English. The natives in this country came in great numbers, out of curiosity, to see the people on board, who were all of so different a color from themselves, and treated them with great civility, and, as they became better acquainted, showed marks of eagerness to purchase the fine things with which the ship was laden. The captain, seeing this, sent patterns of the choicest articles he had to the king of the country, who was so much pleased with them that he sent for the captain and his chief mate to the palace. Here they were placed, as is the custom of the country, on rich carpets flowered with gold and silver, and the king and queen being seated at the upper end of the room, dinner was brought in, which consisted of the greatest rarities. No sooner, however, were the dishes set before the company than an amazing number of rats and mice rushed in and helped themselves plentifully from every dish, scattering pieces of flesh and gravy all about the room. The captain, extremely astonished, asked if these vermin were not very offensive. "Oh, yes," said they, "very offensive, and the king would give half his treasure to be free of them, for they not only destroy his dinner, but they disturb him even in his chamber, so that he is obliged to be watched while he sleeps." The captain, who was ready to jump for joy, remembered poor Whittington's hard case, and the cat he had entrusted to his care, told him he had a creature on board his ship that would kill them all. The king was still more overjoyed than the captain. "Bring this creature to me," says he, "and if she can really perform what you say, I will load your ship with wedges of gold in exchange for her." Away flew the captain, while another dinner was providing, to the ship, and taking Puss under his arm, returned to the palace in time to see the table covered with rats and mice, and the second dinner in a fair way to meet with the same fate as the first. The cat, at the sight of them, did not wait for bidding, but sprang from the captain's arms, and in a few moments laid the greatest part of the rats and mice dead at her feet, while the rest, in the greatest fright imaginable, scampered away to their holes. The king, having seen and considered of the wonderful exploits of Mrs. Puss, and being informed she would soon have young ones, which might in time destroy all the rats and mice in the country, bargained with the captain for his whole ship's cargo, and afterwards agreed to give a prodigious quantity of wedges of gold of still greater value for the cat, with which, after taking leave of their majesties and other great personages belonging to the court, he, with all his ship's company, set sail with a fair wind for England, and after a happy voyage arrived safely in the port of London. One morning Mr. Fitzwarren had just entered his counting-house, and was going to seat himself at the desk, when who should arrive but the captain and mate of the merchant's ship, the Unicorn, just arrived from the coast of Barbary, and followed by several men, bringing with them a prodigious quantity of wedges of gold that had been paid by the King of Barbary in exchange for the merchandise, and also in exchange for Mrs. Puss. Mr. Fitzwarren, the instant he heard the news, ordered Whittington to be called, and having desired him to be seated, said, "Mr. Whittington, most heartily do I rejoice in the news these gentlemen have brought you, for the captain has sold your cat to the King of Barbary, and brought you in return more riches than I possess in the whole world, and may you long enjoy them." Mr. Fitzwarren then desired the men to open the immense treasures they had brought, and added that Mr. Whittington had now nothing to do but put it in some place of safety. Poor Dick could scarce contain himself for joy. He begged his master to take what part of it he pleased, since to his kindness he was indebted for the whole. "No, no, this wealth is all your own, and justly so," answered Mr. Fitzwarren, "and I have no doubt you will use it generously." Whittington, however, was too kind-hearted to keep all himself, and accordingly made a handsome present to the captain, the mate, and every one of the ship's company, and afterwards to his excellent friend the footman, and the rest of Mr. Fitzwarren's servants, not even excepting crabby old Cicely. After this, Mr. Fitzwarren advised him to send for tradespeople, and get himself dressed as became a gentleman, and made him the offer of his house to live in till he could provide himself with a better. When Mr. Whittington's face was washed, his hair curled, his hat cocked, and he was dressed in a fashionable suit of clothes, he appeared as handsome and genteel as any young man who visited at Mr. Fitzwarren's, so that Miss Alice, who had formerly thought of him with compassion, now considered him as fit to be her lover, and the more so, no doubt, because Mr. Whittington was constantly thinking what he could do to oblige her, and making her the prettiest presents imaginable. Mr. Fitzwarren, perceiving their affection for each other, proposed to unite them in marriage, to which, without difficulty, they each consented, and accordingly a day for the wedding was soon fixed, and they were attended to church by the Lord Mayor, the Court of Aldermen, the sheriffs, and a great number of the wealthiest merchants in London, and the ceremony was succeeded by the most elegant entertainment and splendid ball. History tells us that the said Mr. Whittington and his lady lived in great splendor and were very happy, that they had several children, that he was Sheriff of London in the year 1340, and several times afterwards Lord Mayor, that in the last year of his mayoralty he entertained King Henry V on his return from the battle of Agincourt, and some time afterwards, going with an address from the city on one of his Majesty's victories, he received the honor of knighthood. Sir Richard Whittington constantly fed great numbers of the poor. He built a church and college to it, with a yearly allowance to poor scholars, and near it erected a hospital. The effigy of Sir Richard Whittington was to be seen, with his cat in his arms, carved in stone, over the archway of the late prison of Newgate that went across Newgate Street. The end.
And we are back. So, what is your favorite part or version of this story?
I love that Dick Whittington was such an optimistic young man. My mother always called me the eternal optimist, so I can really vibe with the truly optimistic character. It's why I like Sarah Cruz so much, and Anne Shirley and Pollyanna. Actually, it's how I got my name.
Pollyanna! I love Pollyanna.
The nurses called me Pollyanna when I was born because they could tell that I was an optimist and a fighter from the start. So I really love characters like that.
Yeah, I am the same way. I can always find a silver lining or a learning moment, but I'm typically not very positive. My brain is too realist to be positive because I always can see every bad outcome to every situation that I'm in. How can you be completely positive? I can see all the good ones too. My brain goes there. My brain goes both ways in more ways than one. But I can always find a silver lining. So I guess I'm a little bit positive too.
So with the story, I always liked that the young Whittington spent his first penny that he ever earned to buy a cat. Yeah. At the time, this would have been also very smart, since sleeping in the servants' quarters would have left him exposed to a wide variety of vermin. Taking good care of a much beloved furry friend with mousing talents would do wonders for his health and quality of sleep.
Yeah, he even mentioned that whenever they made him sell his cat. And the companionship would also help. And Fergus is also a nice little heater in the winter. So that would probably, like, a cat would just be an all around good companion in those days.
Yeah, my winter heater is 92 pounds of dog. I don't know what a nice little heater is.
I think a lot of us probably know the age-old tale of buying a pet that we can't afford when we probably should buy food or something.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the three of us, yes, that is definitely a true statement. So, what is your least favorite part or version?
I'm torn between asking how Mrs. Puss is going to populate the whole of Barbary with her kittens when they didn't bring along a Mr. Tom to do the deed, and hating the cute boy is rich now so he can marry the previously untouchable pretty girl trope. And I'm not one way or the other. One of those.
Yeah.
Aw, I really liked that he ended up being able to shower Miss Alice with presents and that she became his wife. I was just like, yay. And the real Whittington's wife was named Alice too. They didn't have any children. And when she died before him, he left his fortune to benefit the large number of charities that he had begun during his lifetime.
Oh, like a British Dolly Parton.
Dolly
Yeah.
Parton's doing it before she passed away.
Oh,
so
yeah.
He's not even at her level.
Well, he did found charities, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
But only instead of an amusement park, he got a statue of him holding a cat.
I'm looking.
Man.
He got a lot of statues. I like a lot of statues. They are everywhere.
I bet every single person that put up one of those statues was just like me and hated that they made him sell the cat. That's
Me too. As a child, I was always horrified by Dick being forced to give the captain of the boat his beloved cat. It would have broken my heart. I couldn't have given up one of my critters. When I was about 12, I was too tall to ride my pony anymore, and my parents told me that they would get me a horse if I would sell Beauty to help pay for it. And I couldn't. I was like, no. I decided not even having a horse to ride was worth parting with one of my best friends. So my pony just became more dog and reading companion after that. But I never did manage to get my own horse, but love is love. Beauty was, I would take a book out into the pasture and I would sit down in the pasture and she would stand behind me and I would lean against her front legs to be like a back brace. And she would just stand there and crop the grass around me and shade me while I read. She was a fantastic reading companion.
sounds so comfy.
Also, the rich merchant needs to be more aware of the nature of his domestic staff. Maybe I watched too much Downton Abbey, but a kind, generous master of the house seems at odds with a jealous, petty head of the kitchen. Although, I do watch too much Downton Abbey because Lord Grantham is totally unaware of what Barrow is up to, ever.
Yeah. She was probably this serious bootlicker whenever she was in Fitzwarren's presence, and he would have no clue of what was going on in the parts of the house where he never went. If no one ever complained, he would have just gone on about his merry way, thinking all of his home was just fine and dandy.
It's like a lot of supervisors that I've had in the past.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's totally believable. And other employees, too. So, what are the original lessons that you think the story was trying to convey?
With a bit of luck and the right connections and a good sales pitch, you too can be a wealthy merchant.
Oh, it's the American dream.
Well, it was British before it was American, I guess.
I'm a horrible salesperson, so that's never going to be me.
Colonization will do that.
Colonizer's gonna call him.
Well, I'm going to go with the original lesson being never underestimate the value of a good pet. If you take care of them properly, you will reap unexpected benefits, and not just kittens.
I'm gonna miss the cats and dogs when we move on to snakes next month. Whoops, spoilers. Never mind.
No what? No one said anything to me about snakes.
Nothing. No, nothing. I said nothing.
I do not
What
trust you,
snake?
Polly.
Crazy
It's
talk.
dragons. It's dragons. And dragons are just big lizards, which are just snakes that grew legs.
No, dragons and snakes, two different things. They
Sometimes
don't
in
do that
evolution,
tongue
it
thing.
did go
They don't do that tongue thing.
Sometimes in evolution, it did go the other way, but that's
It might be a
neither here nor
serpent.
there.
Ew.
I didn't say anything. Nothing about snakes.
No.
It's okay, Angel. We'll take care of you.
I
So
don't
what do you
want
think
this.
the modern lesson would be?
Well, whatever else came along, Dick Whittington didn't just sit around and wait for life to happen to him. He happened to life.
Nice.
Sounds like me. I happen to everybody around me.
Ha!
And I would say that the story definitely supports the adage that kindness counts. Because not only is Dick very kind and generous and becomes successful, but the girl who is kind to him when he was being so mistreated ended up becoming a lady of means, specifically because she had been such a sweet and caring person.
So, in closing, what do you think happened after the story?
That's such a hard question to answer when you're talking about an actual historical person because we know what happened.
It makes it easier, but it's not as fun.
Yeah.
I was about to say the same thing, yeah. Although perhaps the fictional Whittington was able to have kids, then he and Alice could have left behind a line of really nice people who headed up all of those charities he started and made sure that they kept going.
I think it's a nice alternate reality. I think he wanted to have kids. He seemed to like them well enough.
I could see that. Not that I like kids or anything, but I could see him liking kids. Maybe he started a cat rescue.
I like a
I
cat
would do
rescue.
if I had that kind
So
of
many
money.
cats.
That's where the cat story comes from.
Won the lottery. I wouldn't tell anybody, but you would know.
You live in a cat rescue. You already
I
do.
do.
Paul.
I live in a cat rescue. I counted up today, and in my life, I have had 29 cats.
Not gonna cuss. Don't
I've
want to
had
get
2
censored, but wow.
and a half, and I've never gone out to buy a cat. I've only had the cat distribution system and my Great Dane picking up a cat out of the gutter.
I've never gone out with the purpose of getting a cat.
No.
I have paid for cats, but I didn't mean to.
How do you accidentally pay for a cat?
My brothers were getting puppies, and there was a cat, and she loved me and wanted to go home with me, so I paid the lady some money, and I brought the cat home with me because she had adopted me. She was my baby cat. She told me so.
Well, my daughter has caused me twice in my life to live in a house that had 2 pets at the same time, a cat and a dog. Generally speaking, my entire life I have been a serial monogamous pet person. I've only ever had 1 pet at a time, except for when my daughter had her cats in the house with my dogs.
Well, I personally only have 3 cats and 1 dog right now, but I also live in a house with other people, and they all have cats and dogs also. But only 3 of them are personally mine.
I only have a cat and a bird currently, but the cat I only have because my Great Dane Minnie adopted him. She picked him up, literally dragged him into the house out of the gutter outside when he was dying in the gutter. and then I had a cat, and now I still have a cat, even though she passed away a long time ago.
Well,
but he's my buddy.
The first cat that joined our household only got to do so because my dog at the time adopted said cat. I was trying to not have a cat, but then I came home and my dog was curled up, cuddling the cat on the sofa, and I was like, "Oh, I've got a cat." And my husband was like, "No, I think your dog has a cat."
Yeah, but my first cat, we went similar to Polly's story, actually. So my brother and I went to get our puppies. We were bringing home brand new puppies. I had a puppy in my arms walking into the house, and I heard a meow, and I was like, what was that? And we lived on a busy street, and I was like 6, and I found a kitten around behind the tire of my parents' car, and that ended up being Poncho. And I had in my arms walking into the house a cat and a dog.
Poncho and Lefty.
And Poncho was raised with the dogs completely and totally, thought he was a dog, and did all the same tricks as the dogs. He even ate dog food for a while because they didn't buy him cat food at first, because of course my mother always just said, no, we're not keeping him, no, we're not keeping him, but then he just stayed around.
He's keeping you.
So I actually had 2 cats, but both of the cats that I had in my life, one was raised with 2 puppies and thought he was a dog, and my other cat was raised by a dog and thinks he is a dog. So I don't really know what it's like to have a cat. I only know what it's like to have cats that think they're dogs.
I have 2 senior citizens and a butler. So, and then we also have a flying monkey.
A flying monkey.
She will leap on you from
still
high
a cat.
places. Still a cat, yes. She thinks she's a flying monkey. She has all the claws, and if you don't catch her, that's okay. She'll catch herself.
Thanks for joining us today. Check us out on Patreon, and you can help us meet our small goal of breaking even and covering our expenses. Your support helps pay for all of the things that podcasting requires, and helps keep this show alive and growing. If you can't afford to support us financially, go give us a good review, subscribe or follow, and share with your friends and family. Feel free to fact check us and offer suggestions to make our show better for you. You can also send us an email at lostinrevisionpodcast@gmail.com.
There's a lot more waiting for us all at the end of the road.